Today I'm taking you to the journey of the Narmada dispute amongst four stakeholding states: Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. And how the conundrum was resolved, and what were the challenges on the way, and how they were addressed, they were surmounted. But finally, I call it a balancing act, because sharing of water does not mean satiating the expectation of each and every stakeholder, rather balancing the interest of all the states altogether. And that is how sharing of water is required to be perceived at. And that's why I have given the title a fine balancing act. Here on the title slide, I have shown you a solution obtained in the game of jigsaw puzzle. This jigsaw puzzle, has different pieces of the jig which are required to be jigged in a proper manner, means to be placed in a proper manner. And if you are successful in doing so, then you will be having a beautiful picture emerge out of your entire ordeal. So this is called a jigsaw puzzle, and exactly like this is the sharing of water. That if you have the collective conscience of all the stakeholders, then it has a potential to shape out miraculous outcomes. And this Narmada Award, I see it is a process of collective conscience development. And that is how I have given an example of this jigsaw puzzle. So this is actually the view of the Narmada Basin between the mountain range of Vindhyas and the mountain range of Satpuras. This entire basin is situated, and because it is situated between the two mountain ranges, lengthwise it is too big, but it is narrow from the width point of view. And you see here the state-wise length means the state formation as of today. Madhya Pradesh is having the greatest length, that is 1079 kilometer, and the drainage area is also too big, 86,000 square kilometer approximately. And out of 99,000 square kilometer of total catchment area of the Narmada, 85% is with Madhya Pradesh, 86% is with Madhya Pradesh. So Maharashtra, it is having the smallest stake, just 35 kilometer length in Narmada, of Narmada is in the Maharashtra state. And the same way the drainage area is also too meager. Gujarat is next to Maharashtra, but Gujarat has 159 kilometer of the length, but 39 kilometer of the length of Narmada forms the border between Maharashtra and Gujarat. So this is actually the common length amongst all. And if you count the total runoff, that is the mean runoff annual point of view, in the billion cubic meter, it is coming to 35.4. And as per 75% dependability of the runoff, the total water that comes at the Garudeshwar site, that is the last site, is 28 million acre feet. So this is how the introduction to the entire basin is. And in the basin map, there are several projects that are spotted, which are either developed or they are in the execution stage as of now. So this is how the status of this basin is as a contextual background. And now I am coming to the historical overview. And I shall also be intertwining into the discussion some inevitable twists which finally coagulated to be a dispute. And then in the subsequent slides, after definition of the dispute, I shall take you to the process of resolution of the dispute. Actually speaking, this Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal's award is viewed as one of the best awards, and that has reinforced a trust within the water fraternity that the most complicated disputes related to water sharing could be brought to an end effectively. And this is perhaps the biggest accomplishment of the entire ordeal taken up through the NWDT. The prior journey that provides important background, which contained the seeds of plausible solution. So it is not only a story of infighting, but it has certain seeds of the solution within the stages of infighting. And I shall be highlighting in the subsequent slides as to where lied the seeds of the solution and how they got germinated into the form of solution at the end. But the process was very slow, and that's why we have spent long years into the settlement of the disputes. The cost that has been paid in the delay is also heavy, but finally, what ends well is considered as the solution. And proverbially speaking, what ends well is the well. So that is how the entire story was. So the story goes back to 1946, where the Government of India's institution called Central Waterways Irrigation and Navigation Commission, CWINC, was there in those days, was entrusted the Narmada Basin Development Plan by the British government. Albeit the process of independence was already on after 1945, but still it was the British rule, and they had this institution prior to CWPRS, and it was given the exercise of Narmada Basin Development Plan. After independence in 1955, the Central Water and Power Commission came into being, and that was entrusted the rest of the exercise. So they rolled out this exercise further. And in 1956, one important event took place. In those days, it was a Bombay state. In Hindi, it was called Bruhat Mumbai Rajya. Albeit, Saurashtra state was separate, Kutch was a separate state. And that's why Bombay state was exclusive to these two. But in 1956, merger of Saurashtra and Kutch with the Bombay state took place. And obviously here, because of the consolidation of the state, the interstate issues became apparently very simple to be resolved, because it was consolidation of not only the territorial boundaries, but of the interest as well. Then the CWPC suggested those days that the Navagam Dam, in those days Sardar Sarovar Dam was called the Navagam Dam. It was their basic mission was to supply the water by gravity to the thirstiest region in the tail end of Narmada. So they concentrated on the Kutch region, which was the thirstiest, and that's why they recommended 320 feet RL to be with the Nagam Dam. And here I am telling you at the very outset that the moot contention amongst all the states all the time remained the reservoir level of the Navagam Dam or the Sardar Sarovar Dam. So here the basic recommendation was the 320 feet to supply the water to the Kutch region by gravity, but this was too preliminary. It was only, contour to contour kind of a thing. Defined like. In 1960, one more interesting event took place. Bombay state was bifurcated into Maharashtra and Gujarat. On the 1st of May 1960, this incident occurred. And here, when the bifurcation took place, Saurashtra and Kutch went with Gujarat. So it was not now the Bruhad Mumbai Rajya. It was Maharashtra and Gujarat along with Saurashtra and Kutch. So the interest groups, they got reconstituted, and that's why the interest got realigned, recolored, and the real interstate struggle started from this point. Obviously, because of the reconstitution of the interest groups. So here the seeds of contentions were sown, albeit out of sight. Nobody could notice it. In 1960, the Planning Commission was moved with a proposal of approval to the Broch irrigation project. In those days, it was called Broch irrigation project. The Sardar Sarovar was called the Broch irrigation project. This Broch irrigation project was approved by the Planning Commission to be taken up in two stages. One, stage number one, full reservoir level up to 162 feet, and the subsequent stage, that is stage number two, to take up this Navagam Dam up to the FRL 320 feet. And the approval of the Planning Commission in those days was accorded only after the clearance of the Government of India, that is the CWPRS and the Ministry of Water Resources. In those days, it was called Ministry of Irrigation and Power. So that was the a milestone kind of a decision of the Planning Commission. As you remember all, that in those days, the crisis of funds was the biggest issue with the Planning Commission. The 5-year plans were rolled out in the recent days, in those days, and sparing the funds was the biggest problem. So the two stages, because of the financial crunch at the Planning Commission level itself. In 1960, another event took place. That was an agreement between Gujarat and Rajasthan on the Mahi Basin. Now here, because I am talking on Narmada Basin, why should I speak on Mahi Basin? But here the story inevitably requires the reference to the Mahi Basin, because the award has been given for the Narmada Basin, considering the water sharing between Rajasthan and Gujarat of the Mahi Basin. So I am giving you a tangential reference of this event because it has a direct bearing on the award of the Narmada. So Gujarat and Rajasthan went into an agreement to share the Mahi waters. They decided to construct a Banswara Dam in the Rajasthan region, just in the upstream of the border between Gujarat and Rajasthan. And the water and expenditure both were shared with one basic condition. And this basic condition has a direct bearing on the Narmada award, that when the Narmada waters are available to the Mahi canals within the Gujarat reach, the balance water of the Mahi basin would be made available to the higher contours within the Gujarat and Rajasthan. And that is how the linkage of the two basins got the interest of Gujarat and Rajasthan interdigitated. So it was an alignment of the interest of Gujarat and Rajasthan. This is how. This is a very memorable photograph of the 5th April 1961, when the Broch irrigation project was inaugurated by the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Here you see in the mid of the photograph the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Chief Minister of Gujarat State is also there. Then, obviously, because Gujarat came into being as a independent state in 1960, Gujarat undertook certain studies that what is the intercepted catchment area after the last dam of Madhya Pradesh and the last dam on the Narmada Basin in the Gujarat reach, that is Punasa in Madhya Pradesh and Navagam in Gujarat. What is the intercepted catchment area and what is the water availability in the intercepted catchment area? And what will be the water availability in the downstream of the Punasa from the Madhya Pradesh side? So accordingly, Gujarat came out with a proposal that the dam height should be taken to FRL 460 feet. And then only all the water could be captured in a bigger receptacle. Otherwise, that water will be very difficult to be captured and that will flow into the sea. So these 460 feet of the FRL that Gujarat came out with, this, became a very big bone of contention. Madhya Pradesh had by then proposed the Harinfal Dam in the upstream of this Navagam, in the reach of Madhya Pradesh, and that was becoming unviable because of this height proposed by Gujarat. However, Gujarat went ahead with the investigation through the Geological Survey of India for this height and the Navagam Dam. Height of the Navagam Dam, this is how became the main bone of contention, and it remained so throughout the history of the dispute, throughout the entire process of resolution. And the basic intention behind this 460 was to capture the water, what was coming from Madhya Pradesh and what was received through the intercepted catchment area. That was very clear. And the other purpose was to serve the water to Kutch by gravity. Now, the basic question in the mind of listeners would be, if CWPRS suggests that 320 feet was all enough to carry the water to the Kutch by gravity, then why this 460 as a logic to supply the water to Kutch by gravity? Truly speaking, I told you at the very outset that it was contour to contour study made by CWPRS, but it was not a detailed study. So the detailed topographical study that made it very clear that 320 feet of the level of the Sardar Sarovar Dam was not enough to carry the water by gravity because of the frictional losses, because of only contour canal technically viable, and because of so many cross drainage structures leading to several points of loss of head and cumulative loss of head because of these structures would not allow the water to reach Kutch by gravity. And that's why raising the height of the dam was technically required. And this is how Harinfal and the Jalasindhi in the Madhya Pradesh reach, though they were very important for them for the hydropower generation, were becoming unviable because of the length of the reservoir being too big. So this is how the entire dispute became somewhat, concretized in the shape. But anyway, the definition of the problem was very clear for Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Madhya Pradesh was very clear in the definition that they wanted hydropower, and Gujarat was very clear in their definition that they wanted all the sweet water of Narmada basin in the intercepted catchment as well to be captured in the receptacle and to be supplied to the thirstiest parts of the state. So the definition of the problem was very clear with both the states, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, and that is how I perceived that each stakeholder, they had very clear definition, very clear perception of their problem. And when the problem definition is very clear, the interests are not hidden, they are expressed, then they become the source of solution. So here I see that problem was already there, but the problem definition was clear. There was no card close to the chest of any state, and that's why the clarity in the problem definition itself became the source of the solution. In the subsequent slides, I shall be taking you to this process, starting from this point only. This is, the location of the Sardar Sarovar. This one, I am just using some annotation tool. So this is the location of the Sardar Sarovar. And This is the contour canal, that is the main canal, traversing almost the entire state to reach the Kutch region. So this is the Kutch region. This is the Kutch region. And because it is contour canal, obviously so many rivers are crossing the main canal, and that's why these cross drainage structures leading to a heavy loss of head. And that's why we required a raised reservoir to be over here. And the frictional losses of 458-kilometer long a canal were also required to be counted for. And that's why this was the proposition from the Gujarat state. I am now taking you to the subsequent slide. Yes. Here, the role of union, when there is interstate problem of water sharing, role of union becomes very important. Because after all, India is a quasi-federal country or a nation. And in the quasi-federal nation, the very spirit of the constitution says that states are administrative unit, as good as independent in their routine activities or routine deliverances. But when there is any kind of interstate collision of interest, the role of union, that is the central government, becomes immensely important. And that's why our constitution is given a touch of quasi-federalism. And that is how here I am showing you that government of India, especially the Minister of Irrigation and Power, he took the lead, because the dispute became very clear between Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat in those days. So he convened a meeting of two chief ministers, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, in 1963 November, and both the chief ministers were convinced in the meeting, and those minutes were called the Bhopal Agreement. In the Bhopal Agreement, under the leadership of Union Minister Irrigation and Power, with two chief ministers of two states, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, they decided that Navagam Dam height should be restricted to 425 feet. Gujarat should leave their claim of 460 feet of height of the Navagam Dam. Madhya Pradesh will have Punasa Dam of 850 feet, which was becoming viable with 425 feet of the Navagam Dam. It was unviable with the 460 feet, and that's why here the stance was taken like this. The Bargi project was taken at 1365 feet of the height. The cost and power benefits to be shared between Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh in the ratio of 1:2. As I told you, Madhya Pradesh was having too large catchment area and too much of length of the river. So obviously its share must be bigger than Gujarat. And accordingly, it was decided 1:2 ratio in the power and cost. Out of Madhya Pradesh's share, Maharashtra will be given half of the power, against which Maharashtra will provide 1/3 of the cost of the dam in the form of a loan with the tenure of 25 years to be repaid by Madhya Pradesh to Maharashtra. And the loan of rupees 10 crore in total to be extended by Gujarat and Maharashtra for the Bargi project as well. So this is how the entire Bhopal agreement was drafted. It was albeit a minute of the meeting, and this was actually speaking a solution in the offing. Gujarat ratified the Bhopal agreement after coming back of his chief minister to the state capital called Ahmedabad. In those days it was Ahmedabad, now it is Gandhinagar. So Gujarat ratified the Bhopal agreement. Though the dam height was restricted to 425 feet against their original proposition of 460 feet. But Madhya Pradesh did not ratify the Bhopal agreement, and that's why the solution that came into the offing that slipped away at the final moment, and the dispute loomed over. So here, Union was extremely responsible, and Gujarat became a responsive stakeholder. But somehow, the destiny had a different plan for the entire basin development, and that's why this solution slipped off. Then, Union Ministry, that is Irrigation and Power, they made one more effort to rationalize the demands of the stakeholding states. They appointed Narmada Water Resources Development Committee, headed by Dr. A.N. Khosla, on 5th of this September 1964. Here is the Narmada Basin. So in the very initial stage, the Bargi was there. Here was the Narmada, and here in the Gujarat reach, just as Narmada travels into the state of Gujarat, was the proposed site for Navagam Dam. Today, Sardar Sarovar Dam this is the final site, that is the site number 3. I'm not going into those technical details, but this is how this committee was appointed by the Union Ministry. The intention was very clear: to rationalize the demands of the states. There could be two results. Either the dispute will be eschewed by the recommendations of the committee, or at least the committee will be providing a frame for resolution. So Government of India's intentions were very clear. If the dispute is eschewed, nothing better could be like. Nothing better than that could be. And if there is a frame for resolution emerging out of the recommendations of the committee, then the resolution would become simpler. So with this clear intention, this committee was appointed by the Government of India, and because Dr. A.N. Khosla was involved in the Narmada Basin exercise right from the beginning of this envisaging of the development plan, within just 1 year, a very short period, his committee submitted their recommendations. They are called the Khosla Committee recommendations, which were submitted on the 1st of September 1965. And here, he came out with a clear proposition that Madhya Pradesh's area of irrigation should be considered as 26.3 lakh hectare, and the water allocation in the million acre feet should be 15.6. The power generation at 60% load factor should be allotted to the Madhya Pradesh share or pie as 1592 megawatt. For Maharashtra, because it has a meager length of the river, meager catchment area, their irrigation was also in the meager area, and the water allocation was also meager. The power that was coming to the share according to those recommendations were 211 megawatt. And Gujarat, they considered 18.55 lakh hectare of the irrigation and 10.65 million acre feet of water allocation with same hydropower as what was shared for Maharashtra. But here, Khosla considered Mahi water altogether with Narmada. He conjoined, considering the treaty between Rajasthan and Gujarat on the Mahi water. He conjectured in those days that when the Narmada water would be supplied to the on the way command area of Mahi within the Gujarat state, that much water in the Mahi basin will be spared and would be possible to be diverted to the upper contours, and that will be benefiting additional 1.6 to 2 lakh hectare of Gujarat and 3 lakh hectare in the Rajasthan reach. So he considered both the basins together, Mahi and Narmada, and it was a landmark consideration by him, stating the fundamental principle of administration that national interest should have overriding priority, and optimizing the benefits of water for the purpose of irrigation and power should be the aim of the government while meting out the justice. So this is the basic premises on which he considered Mahi and Narmada Basin altogether. And that is how he came out with this proposition. He considered Rajasthan also as a beneficiary state of the Narmada, and he suggested that 0.4 lakh hectare of Narmada water can also be given to Rajasthan at the tail end of the main canal of the Sardar Sarovar project. And water allocated for Rajasthan was 0.25 million acre feet. Now you will have a fundamental question that in Narmada Basin, Rajasthan has no catchment area. No length of Narmada passes through Rajasthan. Then why should Rajasthan be considered as a stakeholding state? Rajasthan is not considered as a stakeholding state in the Narmada Basin. It is considered as a beneficiary state, technically feasible and in dire need of the water, especially in the Sanchor part, that is the desert part. So this was the perception of Dr. A.N. Khosla in those days, and that's why he underlined the principle that national interest should have overriding priority. And optimizing the benefits of irrigation and power should be the motto of the governments, rather than resorting to, or rather than harvesting any kind of parochial benefits out of the partisan kind of mindsets. And that's why I say that Khosla's exercise was the balancing exercise, and he had outlined the solution through a consultative approach. He had made consultation with all the states, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. So his approach was also very much pragmatic and practical, and he had outlined a holistic solution of Narmada and Mahi Basin altogether, and he had tried his level best to make a balancing exercise, and this was the proposition. In the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal, the beginning of the resolution was made with the Khosla Committee's recommendations. As this was fundamentally a balancing exercise, and that was taken as the foundation or the beginning point to draft the award. And that's why I am highlighting these recommendations so much. In between means appointment of the Khosla Committee and submission of the recommendations by the Khosla Committee, there was an agreement between Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra inked for the Jalasindhi project. It was a hydropower project, and this was actually an effect of the reconstitution of the interest group. When Gujarat was a part of Bruhad Mumbai, that is Bombay state in those days, Maharashtra did not have any kind of, conflict of interest. But as soon as Gujarat was carved out, the interests were recolored and realigned, and that's why Maharashtra went into an agreement with Madhya Pradesh on the Jalasindhi for getting hydropower. Now the comments by the states on the recommendations of the Khosla Committee were, Madhya Pradesh claimed that diversion of water to the Tons Valley and Mahanadi Basin was technically feasible. Satna and Rewa were also scarcity and famine-prone areas like Kutch of Gujarat, and that's why they should also be incorporated into the water sharing of the Narmada. Maharashtra advocated restriction of the Navagam dam height to 210 feet, and the full supply level of the canal should be restricted to 190 feet. This was the contention submitted by Maharashtra. So truly speaking, it was the derationalization of the balancing act made by Dr. Khosla, and finally a stage of dispute struck, and here the dispute became very clear. The height of the Navagam dam, the off-taking point of the main canal, or the level of the off-taking of the main canal, they became the bone of contention. And further, which area of which state to be taken into the beneficiary part or the command area of the Narmada Basin also became a bone of contention for all the states. So here the dispute, the moment of dispute struck the horizon of the history of the Narmada Basin Development Plan. Still, the union government was not ready to just throw the states to their own future. This is the point where I would like to underline the sincerity of the union government. See what kind of responsibility, ultimate level of responsibility at the union level is mirrored over here. Union Minister Irrigation and Power made the chief ministers of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Gujarat in their state capitals during the May and June of 1966. Just see, the union minister goes to the different states to meet the chief ministers to convince them that please arrive at a solution, otherwise the benefit of water are getting delayed and that is hampering the development of the nation. There were prolonged official level discussions at Delhi subsequent to these meetings in the July and August of 1966. But still, the main issues remained the same. Union Minister Irrigation and Power again made the chief ministers of all the 4 states. In 1966, up to 18th of December, he made persistent efforts to convince all the states. But unfortunately, all the meetings went infructuous and all the efforts, earnest efforts of the union, they could not bring up. And here, I would like to underline that on every occasion, Gujarat tried to remain responsive. Not because I am an engineer from Gujarat that I am taking the side with Gujarat. I was not born in those days, but still, as a water fraternity, I see that the stance of Gujarat remained always ironic, rational, and appointment of a Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal took place on 16th of this October 1969. Here, the story of conflicts now takes the form of story of conflicts and cooperation. So here onward the cooperation starts. So the TWILs, the phraseology that I have used in my first slide, that it is a story containing inevitable TWILs. So again a TWIL came and the cooperation started getting revolved into the conflicts and resolution. So here we need to understand one fundamental adage, that what is needed is to appreciate the quasi-federal basis of the Constitution and to allow the unitary and federal system to play their roles at opportune times. If you fail, your water sharing will be delayed, the benefits of the water will be available delayed, and your development will also be hampered thereby. Dispute resolution requires sanity given opportunity to fix the mind. Listen here. Dispute resolution requires sanity given opportunity to frisk the minds rather than having preoccupied minds. So here, one very good incident occurred that all the states made dialogues, understanding the stiffness of the dispute. They culled out gradually the insignificant issues which brought a point of inflection, and resolution of the moot issues became simpler for the NWDT. So as I told you, the framework outlined by Dr. Khosla became fundamentally important over here. It had sown the seeds of solution, probable solution into the mindsets of the state leaders. And that's why they decided to cull out the paltry issues and to take only the important issues before the NWDT. So when the NWDT started its proceedings, the framing of the issues was the first stage, in which there were so many issues, one volume full issues are there. which were fundamentally framed by the NWDT in the initial proceedings. But here, there was an agreement on 22nd of July 1972 amongst the stakeholding states, that is, after framing the issues by the NWDT. Chief ministers of the states concerned feel that development of Narmada should no longer be delayed in the best regional and national interest, and therefore agree to the settlement of disputes connected with this river by mutual agreement and with assistance of the Prime Minister of India. So wisdom came to all the political leaders of the four states, but of late, but better late than never. Considering 28 million acre feet yield of the Narmada basin at 75% dependability at the dam site of Navagam, 0.25 million acre feet for Maharashtra and 0.5 million acre feet was Rajasthan, was decided to be allocated unanimously, and the balance of water to be shared by Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, because Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat were the biggest stakeholders and Maharashtra was too small a stakeholder from water point of view. Rajasthan was not a stakeholder. It was merely a beneficiary state, and that's why their share was decided unanimously. So NWDT's job became very simple: sharing of the water out of 27.25 million acre feet between Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat was the main task with NWDT those days. So express sense of cooperation here started getting shape, and that became the basis for the NWDT to found a logical conclusion upon. So timely conclusion was the need of all the stakeholders, and they were convinced on this aspect, and that's why they decided to take the wisest course in the deliberation with the NWDT. Then, again, one more agreement was entered into on 20th of July 1974, and that was actually that issues number so and so, so and so. See, so many issues framed by the tribunal on 28th of January 1971 may be deleted. Means they all arrived at a conscientious solution of these many issues, and they were requested to be deleted at the NWDT level. So what I mean to say here, that Madhya Pradesh decided to withdraw all the proceedings filed before the Supreme Court. The same case with Rajasthan. Rajasthan also cooperated. They decided to withdraw all the cases from the Supreme Court. And it was a consensus resulted into dropping of several knotty issues. This made the task of the NWDT further simpler. And one more apparent aspect or a legal ratio that emerged out of the entire struggle, that Rajasthan shall be a party to the further proceedings before the tribunal without prejudice to the legal position regarding the right of a non-riparian state. See the legal ratio here. Rajasthan was not a riparian state in the Narmada basin, but all the states came together and decided that Rajasthan shall be a party to the further proceedings before the tribunal without any prejudice to the legal position regarding the right of a non-riparian state. So here the ratio that emerges out of is that the act itself is Interstate Water Dispute Redressal. This act is for interstate water dispute redressal, which is not limited to a single basin. There could be two basins altogether as an interstate dispute. An interstate dispute can be extended to more than one basins. So this is the legal ratio that has emerged, and this is the unique feature of the Narmada dispute. So Interstate Water Disputes Act of 1956 can take into consideration more than one basin as a single interstate water dispute. This ratio became very important for the so many future tribunal proceedings. So, fundamental principles in the NWDT award that were decided to be taken as basis of the award. The first one was the doctrine of absolute territorial sovereignty, which is upstream centric. You know that in my first lecture, I had taken you to the Harman rule, and Harman rule are nowhere in the practice nowadays, but this rule was endorsed by the NWDT in those days simply because Madhya Pradesh had an overwhelming share in the catchment area as well as length of the river, and that's why this principle, though is not universally acceptable, as an exceptional case was taken into consideration by the NWDT. Theory of absolute territorial integrity, that is the downstream centric, was also endorsed and taken as the basis of the solution. As I told you, it is not much supported by the days, but still it was given due emphasis by the NWDT, keeping in view a special feature that the thirstiest in the state of Gujarat, and that's why the downstream most state, that is Gujarat, should also be given some kind of importance, and that's why these two apparently looking opposite principles, completely outdated, antiquated, were taken as the basis over here. And the most important is the doctrine of prior apportionment, that is historical basis. This also was taken into consideration because Madhya Pradesh had already started execution of several projects on the Narmada and the tributaries of Narmada. So if you discount all those projects, then those projects will also become challengeable, and the task of resolution of the water sharing dispute would become almost impossible. So keeping in mind these ongoing projects in the Madhya Pradesh reach, that historical basis or doctrine of prior apportionment was also taken as a basis by this Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal. So this is how, the most sensibly worked out frame of doctrines were taken as the basis by NWDT. And one more thing, that I had taken you to the fundamental principle in the first lecture, that opinions of the experts is also taken as fundamental basis of award in the dispute redressal by any tribunal in the world. And here Dr. Khosla's report became the fundamental outline of the framework of the solution, and that was also expressly taken as the basis by the dispute redressal tribunal. So finally the award came out on 12th of December 1979, and that was giving us the proposition like this: total storage in the Sardar Sarovar reservoir would be 7.7 million acre feet. Main canal full supply level would be taken as 300 feet. Main canal bed level will be taken as 275 feet. And this is exactly as recommended by Dr. Khosla. So tribunal has not changed at all what Khosla recommended in his report. The FRL of the dam was taken as 138.68 meter, again in line with Dr. Khosla. So as I told you, Khosla's recommendation were absolutely important outline of the framework of the solution, and it eased out so many problems on the way to the award to be given by the NWDT. The water sharing was like this. Gujarat was given 9 million acre feet. Now here the tribunal differs from Khosla's report. Khosla recommended to Gujarat 10.55 million acre feet. Whereas water allocation was reduced for Gujarat because tribunal decided that water is limited, and judiciously if it is shared, then Gujarat will have to reduce this command area, and the Mahi Basin command area that is existing in Gujarat will not be given the Narmada water. So 9 million acre feet would be the restricted water to be allotted to Gujarat. Madhya Pradesh would be allotted 18.25 million acre feet of Gujarat of water. That is the highest allocation because the catchment area is the highest, the length is the highest in Madhya Pradesh. Maharashtra would be given 0.25 million acre feet as jointly decided by all the stakeholders, and Rajasthan 0.5 million acre feet. Power sharing was decided as 1450 megawatt. The estimation was revised. Gujarat was given 16% of the power, much more than what Dr. A.N. Khosla conjectured in his report. Madhya Pradesh was given 57%, lower than what Khosla conjectured in his report. Maharashtra given 27%. Too much more than what Dr. Khosla conjectured. So share of power reduced from Madhya Pradesh and given to Gujarat and Maharashtra. But water sharing was given too much to the Madhya Pradesh by the tribunal after so many deliberations and hearings. Albeit, for Gujarat, there was one redeeming feature. On the one hand, they got reduced water supply, water availability. There is 9 million acre feet, and the dam height, such that only 7.7 million acre feet would be the total receptacle size. So obviously, the live storage will be much reduced. So the argument of Gujarat was that with so small a live storage, how can we fetch the 9 million acre feet of water? So the reply in the tribunal award was very clear that there would be a monthly release from Madhya Pradesh to the tune of 0.677 million acre feet in the non-monsoon seasons. So for the 8 months, there would be 0.677 million acre feet of monthly release by Madhya Pradesh. And that is how the receptacle size, though, is not sufficient to capture 9 million acre feet of the monsoon water, the summation will become more than 9. In case there is more than 28 million acre feet of yield in the Narmada Basin, every state will be given more water share in the same ratio, 9, 18.25, 0.25 and 5 would be the ratio. Then Gujarat can fetch more water. So, in spite of having limited receptacle size, the solution was given in the tribunal award. The component-wise cost sharing was also decided by the tribunal in the same manner, and the validity of the award was decided to be 45 years. That is the date of the notification, 12th of December 1979. 45 years will be the validity of the NWDT, and then it will be revised. So this was the outline of the award. I have just given you the bird's eye view of the entire award, and the multidimensional aspects that were considered were genuineness of the demand of the states in deciding the command area and delta from conditions of the soil and atmosphere. You will be astonished to learn that the soil condition, atmospheric condition, cropping pattern, everything was studied properly by the NWDT by hiring the experts of the respective domains. So just as I told you, Dr. A.N. Khosla was treated as an expert into this domain. Other agricultural experts and ecology experts were also hired for this purpose, and genuineness of the demand was considered in the light of soil condition, atmospheric conditions, cropping pattern, etc. Catchment areas and water availability into different states were also taken into account. Population and drinking water requirements were also considered. Submergence and rehabilitation aspects were also duly taken into consideration. Environment and ecology, preliminary engineering was also taken into consideration so that whatever the concerns of the states are, they are duly addressed without even a modicum of missing. Functional and operational requirements were also duly given weightage by the NWDT. So finally, comprehensive considerations were taken, and that's why it was a judicious sharing of water, and its implementation was also better chalked out. Now I am coming to the point how the evenness of the keel was maintained. As I told you, water sharing requires a balancing act. It is not that satiating all the demands of all the stakeholders. It is impossible. But balancing act, so maintenance of the evenness of the keel, that is important, and how it was in the award. Madhya Pradesh's concern, being an upstream state, was largest catchment, largest length of the river, and that's why it was given, a greater water allocation and hydropower as well. So that was very nicely addressed. Maharashtra concern as a co-riparian state was only for the hydropower. They were not interested in the irrigation because the water that would come to their share would be too meager. And the topography is so much mountainous that for bringing so small a quantum of water, spending so much of an amount will not be a wise proposition. So Maharashtra was interested more in the power, and all the time in the deliberation at the NWDT, they were emphasizing on the power. So they were given the higher quantum of higher sharing of power as compared to Dr. A.N. Khosla, and that's why Maharashtra was more than satisfied. Gujarat's interest was for the height of the dam, so that they could fetch all the water of the intercepted catchment area, and they could transfer all the water to the thirstiest part, that is the desert of the Kutch. That was also duly addressed by giving them the height of 460 feet as recommended by Dr. Khosla, 138 point something meter, and sharing of Mahi water between Rajasthan and Gujarat, which had a direct bearing on the Narmada Basin water sharing, that was not actually fully honored. And that was the reason for the water availability was very limited. And that's why transferring water into the Mahi Basin, into the Gujarat reach, was not possible, because the share of the Gujarat was reduced from 10.55 million acre feet to 9 million acre feet. So this aspect got missing. But that was also a maintenance of the evenness of the keel. And the cost sharing, that also was shaped in so balanced a way that cost never became an issue after the award. Adjudication on sharing of water is not a conventional judicial exercise. NWDT is basically, a judicial exercise on the water sharing. But this judicial exercise of sharing of water is not like the conventional judicial exercise. Because in the conventional judicial exercise, the judges have to find what is right and what is wrong. Which party is right and which party is wrong. To which extent which party is right and to which extent which party is wrong. But here you don't require to go into the details as to who is right and who is wrong. You need to finally arrive at a proper balanced distribution of the benefits, and that is the main objective of the entire ordeal. So this kind of adjudication or a judicial exercise is quite different from the conventional one. And that was very nicely done by the NWDT. Now, one very important aspect is there, that adjudication is not the end of the dispute, especially in the water sharing. Mind well, adjudication is not the end of the dispute. Implementation of the award is a way of chance to encounter further issues. This is a fact. So many issues could come to the way on implementation of the award, and that's why implementation of the award depends on clarity of the provisions, sense of the cooperation amongst the stakeholders, and institutional mechanism provided for eschewing the implementation state disputes. So these are three most important essentials for better implementation of the award of any water sharing tribunal. Sense of cooperation among the stakeholder, number one. Number two, institutional mechanism for avoiding the implementation state disputes. And number three, clarity in the provisions. If anything is missing out of three, then your award will again become a Pandora's box. Here, the Narmada Control Authority was constituted under the award of the tribunal. Narmada Control Authority was an interstate administrative authority for the purpose of securing compliance with the provisions of the award. And in case there is any kind of decision to be taken to bridge the gap, this NCA will be taking an executive decision. Total 7 members were there, 1 from each party state and 3 by the union government, and one of the 3 would be the chairman. So that is how the NCA was constituted, which is working well even today. Hats off to them. Hats off to the institutional mechanism envisaged in those days by the NWDT. One point that was not that much important in those days, that was the environmental flow. You know that environmental flow nowadays has become a matter of big concern for everybody. But this was not so much important in those days, that is 1979. It was taken for granted that the dam operation at the tail end would be done in such a manner that the river ecology will be duly taken care of. That was an implicit kind of an understanding of everybody. But finally, this became an express issue. So, subsequent to the award, Narmada Control Authority's Environmental Subcommittee called a meeting of all the states, and though it became a serious issue subsequently, it decided that there would be a 600 cubic of environmental flow to be consistently maintained by the tail end project authority, that is Sardar Sarovar Dam. And that is how the Narmada Control Authority took a decision which is not expressly mentioned anywhere in the award. So what I mean to say, the importance of the institution like NCA, that implementation can be done of the award only if this kind of institutional mechanism is properly set up to ensure that in case there is any requirement of bridging the gap occurs in the course of implementation, that could be duly taken care of without entering into further disputes. So this is the beauty of the NCA kind of mechanism that they have been nicely delivering. And so far there has not been any kind of dispute in the implementation. In the December 24, 45 years of the award are getting completed, and there will be a stage of review. But just imagine, 41 years have almost elapsed, and still there is no big issue or unsurmountable issue that has led us to the Supreme Court. Is the real beauty of the NWDT award and sensibility of the 4 stakeholding states. In the conclusion, I would say that, negotiation is the key to success in the dispute resolution. Everyone cannot avail what he wants, but at least a part of it if benefits are shared. So this is the sensibility or pragmatability into our mindset, that we cannot avail whatever we want, even in the human life, not in the water sharing. You can't expect your every dream to come out true. And that is called the satisfaction. Understanding of this is called the satisfaction. Sometimes negotiation is unable to resolve the problem, but that does not mean negotiation goes futile. Negotiations build a collective conscience bit by bit, which subsequently helps resolve the problem. And that's why Union Ministry went on negotiation over negotiation over negotiation. And finally, all the 4 states got a collective conscience that yes, let us drop so many issues from the NWDT. Let us take Rajasthan as a beneficiary state, though it is not directly and legally a riparian one. Let us give it the share from Narmada and let us convince them. So this is how the negotiations are important in the interstate water sharing dialogues. Constitution, if viewed and honored in the right perspective, and the union and the states play their roles with due diligence, disputes can be resolved effectively without involving into any kind of bitter dialogues and bitter reminiscences. We can effectively work out the solution. What is required is enormous sanity, that is rising above the partisanism, no parochial and partisan interest, working for the nation as a whole, as a single unit, as Dr. A.N. Khosla envisaged. This is needed to be with the political leadership, as their role is not merely to be the legislators, but they have to play the roles as executives too. So if this kind of sense of responsibility is there in the leadership, they will not behave like what today our state leadership is behaving. So go back to the glorious past is my bit of advice to the water fraternity and the political fraternity as well. Water is a community resource and therefore it cannot be divided by political boundaries. Optimum benefits should be the objective, with equilibrium of benefits shared amongst the stakeholders. So this is the fundamental lesson that is emerging out of entire labyrinthine dispute redressal ordeal that we have gone through in the Narmada Basin. And in the conclusion, I would cite a very epitomical statement of Alexander Fleming. The more complex the world becomes, the more difficult it is to complete something without the cooperation with others. And that's why Swami Vivekananda said in those days that now the competition and conflict will be superseded by the cooperation in the coming days. So I learned that C for conflict is required to be unlearned by all of us, and C for cooperation is required to be learned by all of us. Thank you so much.